Imagine the typical classroom where you have probably 55, 60, sometimes even 80 children to one teacher. Does one think that is really possible, or is that kind of education going to be really effective? Another contributing factor is the gap between what happens in the teacher education and what is required to happen in the classroom.
A very good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, wherever or whoever is watching this series of Changemakers in the Education. In this series, we have with us Ms. Dymphna Dias. Dymphna has been spearheading the work at Muktangan Education Trust for a very long period of time. She comes with a bachelor and master's degree in education. She has been connected with Muktangan and has been spending her time there for over 20 plus years. Earlier worked as a teacher and a trainer for English proficiency, and later as a departmental head for social science. Today, working as the co-CEO of Muktangan Education Trust, Dymphna looks into the programmatic aspects and is deeply involved in the program sustainability. So welcome Dymphna to the show. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you.
So in this series, Dymphna, we are going to deep dive into the work that Muktangan has been doing, especially as you talk about building inclusive, holistic, and child-friendly schools. We want to understand what has been the approach of Muktangan over the years and some key learnings that you have been able to draw of the work that you have been able to do over the past 20 plus years. So if we can understand a little bit about the work of Muktangan before we delve deeper into it.
Sure. I'll get into that straight away, Nidhi. Thanks. Yeah, so I'll talk about why Muktangan, because that answers the same question that you've posed. Well, Muktangan is an integrated model of teacher and school education. And the purpose for setting up a model like this is because gaps were noticed in the educational space over here in our country in India. What are these gaps I'm talking about? I'm talking about gaps between the teacher and the child, between the child or the teacher and the community, between what is actually happening in the classroom and what the child is required to do later on in life. So these gaps being very, what should I say, uh, gaps that have not been addressed in the past is what led our founder, Mrs. Elizabeth Mehta, to set up Muktangan in the year 2003. Now, we are an inclusive model, and for us, child centric means keeping the child as the center of the focus. Of course, the child cannot always be the one to decide things, but keeping the needs of the child at the heart of all that we do. Our model is inclusive. Our model provides holistic education to children. And we also simultaneously look at the development and professional development of the teachers who are going to be dealing with the child. And yes, not forgetting the parent community. Because for the child to really thrive, it's the teacher, the parent, and the child that need to work closely together.
Thank you, Dymphna, for talking about these essential gaps which are not addressed. I think this is where organizations like yours, mine, and the others who have been working in the field come into picture. And you touched upon the topic of child-centric education. We will get more into the role of teachers and the community on being able to ensure that. But if you can elaborate a little bit more on what does child-centric education mean to you and how does it come into practice in Muktangan schools?
All right. So when I say child centric, I'm talking about educating the child such that the child develops skills of critical thinking, confidence, collaboration, effective communication. Now, how can this happen? Imagine the typical classroom where you have probably 55, 60, sometimes even 80 children to one teacher. Does one think that is really possible, or is that kind of going to be that kind of education going to be really effective? I don't think so. And I'm sure many of you would agree with that. So, we first of all have addressed this problem by having a classroom where our teacher child ratio is 1 is to 15. How do we do that? Yes, space is a problem for us. But within a typical classroom setting where you have about 39 to 40 children on an average, that's the Muktangan strength of our classrooms, we have three teachers teaching the children in three groups simultaneously. And we also have what we call differentiated instruction because all children are not at the same level. And that will vary for subjects. So, since we have the advantage of three teachers, the children are divided into groups as per their level of that subject. And then the teachers are supported and developed to be able to deal with those requirements of the children. We also have an active constructivist approach. What do I mean by active constructivist? It means not just teaching the child or providing them with information or just sitting there and like the chalk and talk method being used, but through our approach we provide children with learning experiences, could be in the classroom, could be outdoors, wherein they kind of explore a concept, they think about it, the teacher asks questions, the teacher probably gives the children to perform some activity based on which the child will then conclude and come to his or her own understanding of that concept, and that kind of learning or that kind of understanding is almost like permanent. It stays with the child, rather than the rote memorization method.
Amazing. The word, I mean, the concept of differentiated learning is something which our classrooms have been wanting for a very long time. We know of uh, maybe 70% of our rural classrooms are MGML, they have multi-grade, multi-level learning. And an ideal teacher is supposed to be delivering a differentiated learning. However, the infrastructure requirement of our schools are such that she ends up somehow managing a class, forget about differentiated learning. So, considering the average pupil teacher ratio in India, which is somewhere around 1 is to 26, uh, I have a follow up question on how do you think a model where 1 is to 15 or something like a scenario where a teacher can focus on the child, how do you see that happening in a country like India? Also, considering the fact that we have over 8.4 lakh teacher vacancies as well. So, what do you think could be some ways and means in which this problem can be tackled, considering the scale of issues also that we have?
Great question, and I'll talk about exactly how Muktangan has addressed it.
Yes.
Yes, we have that large requirement of teachers, but don't forget the population that we have. And that's our greatest resource, the human resources available to us in a country like India. And that's exactly what Muktangan has done. What have we done? We have tapped community potential. How? We've taken willing, interested young members of the community, not just interested, but passionate, wanting to be the change agents, wanting to bring about development and change in their own communities. We've taken them, we've developed them over the years. First of all, through our 1 year pre service teacher education course. And then, once they join us as teachers, in the ongoing in service teacher education courses that we have. And I can talk about that a little later. But through that, we've proved that the same community members can be effective teachers in the classroom. So there you have such a large pool of human resources, and you'll have the numbers to meet the requirement.
Amazing. I mean, this fact that there is a large pool of community members, A, willing to, and also having the potential. So it's just a matter of giving them the right skill set and being able to turn them around so that they become
Absolutely.
great resources in the classroom.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
touched upon that. How do you think, like, what are those resources through which we need to, A, prepare these community people? And second, my larger question is, uh, teachers, how do we keep the teachers at the forefront of this? Because even when the community members are entering into the classroom, they have to assist the teachers. They are the ones who are playing the central role in being able to execute the entire thing. So what is the role of teachers in being able to create a classroom which is again inclusive, holistic, and child friendly?
Great question, and so many thoughts running through my mind. First of all, understanding, as you rightly said, that the teacher is at the heart of this all. Because I think in reality, the teacher is not given that importance, the teacher is not given that autonomy. So I think the system needs changing, and the powers that be need to remember, need to understand, and need to ensure that the teacher is given that autonomy and support required. Because who knows the child better than the teacher,
Right.
other than the parent? And of course, drawing on the parents and the community as well, because they are also another rich resource that we have, and working together collaboratively with the parents. So when I say tapping on teacher and community potential, we've taken on, I would say, absolutely raw members of the community. We don't necessarily need great qualifications. If you see, they have the basic communication skills. Even English proficiency is not really required in the beginning. As long as they can communicate and articulate, as long as they can understand and they're willing to kind of, work with the children and develop the children, through our ongoing professional development, we develop these teachers. And of course, simultaneously, we have English proficiency for them because we are running English medium schools. So that's something that the teachers will require in their journey as teachers. But it's not just content knowledge that we develop in the teachers. There are also softer skills about, looking into the social emotional needs of the child, mentoring the children, and, kind of ensuring that the child is at ease. Every child is paid attention to. And this is also where our teacher child ratio plays an important role. In a small group, the teacher is able to ask a question and ensure that every child answers. Children get to understand that there is not necessarily a right answer, but every answer can be then built upon. So, all that happens in our classrooms while the teachers are simultaneously developing along with the children.
Amazing. I think one point which you very strongly emphasized was the autonomy of the teacher, because who else knows the child better? Uh, what are some suggestions maybe you can, talk about, especially for the larger Indian education system overall? How do you think? Because there are the intent is there. There's a large amount of upskilling happening for the teacher so that she is able to take the right decision in the classroom, considering what is best for the moment. But what do you think are some of the larger gaps, and what are those pressing areas which we need to tackle, considering the teacher development front?
Okay. So, I think the voice of the teachers needs to be heard. Now, how can that be done? Through a kind of a feedback reflective loop is what I would suggest. Now, how? For example, in our model, we have teacher educators who are simultaneously developing the teachers. Then you have the teachers going into the classroom and dealing with the children. But the teacher educators, when they observe the teachers in the classroom, and then they go into their next so called planning meeting, what we call a CUD meeting, Curriculum Understanding, Design and Development meeting. It's very important for the teacher educator to first hear what the teacher says about the observation of her own classroom teaching experience. And what are her learnings, or what does the teacher feel didn't go quite well, what could have been done better, what else does the teacher need? So if all of that is heard, and then that's taken back into the planning of the next CUD meeting, and this feedback is played again and again and again, and the teacher's voice is being heard, I think we will see eventually quality happening and changes happening in the classroom.
Amazing. I think this is an ideal scenario where voices from the teacher, I think from different other trainings also that I have been part of for teacher development, this is one thing teachers have been emphasizing, that A, let us do our classroom the way we want to. And second, we are not like, we have come here after a lot of work which we have already done. We have spent a lot of time in the classroom. So it's important that you just coming and telling us, listen to us also. We also have a lot of expertise which we carry. So definitely the voices from the teachers need to be heard. But again, the way in which the larger education system is working, uh, can you think of, or can you help us with some ideas in which we can, ensure more teachers come on board and talk about their reflections? Because for the teacher, it becomes essential that they're also reflective practitioners. They need to understand what went wrong or what went right to be able to come up and deliver that in a larger forum. So, do you think that teachers right now have the skills to reflect on their classroom practices and talk about it also?
They definitely do. They definitely do. Observe a teacher closely and you will see it. And a passionate teacher who really wants to see her child thriving and flourishing out there, of course, she will do anything and everything to make sure that happens. Now, generally, what happens, we have a top down approach, right? It's the school leader and whoever above her or him, then telling the school leader that this is what needs to be done, and then the teacher needs to get into the classroom and do it. But if, and a lot of professional development does happen, we know even at the government level, it happens, it's like mandated. But what really happens in these professional development sessions? Don't get me wrong, but it's often like, oh, teachers need this, so let me give them this. Or teachers need that, let us teach them that. But are we really calling teachers together for discussions? Are we really listening to them? Are we really letting them come up and share ideas or best practices or demo something that has worked for them and let others learn from that? I think this kind of collaborative learning, peer learning amongst teachers will really, really help.
I think then in that case, maybe having a session where teachers come and facilitate the session, co-facilitate the session along with the trainer is
Yeah.
something which we will be very surprised to see if that happens.
And I'm sure we'd be amazed at what they can come up with. I mean, we see
Absolutely.
that sometimes playing out in Muktangan.
Amazing.
And
No,
another thing let me add, it's also important for teacher educators to have a very open to learning attitude.
right.
If I, as a teacher educator, come in with an attitude that, okay, I've been a teacher and I've been a teacher educator so many years and I know it, now you've got to listen to me because I've done it all, that's not going to work. And education is not static. Times are changing, needs are changing, student compositions and what they come with are changing. So I think teachers and teacher educators need to constantly keep that in mind and move with the times.
Absolutely. So, as you talk about the change and the constant development, technology is one thing which has been a disruptive, technology in the classrooms. And these days, everyone has been talking about integration of technology in the classroom, AI being, a friend for a teacher versus can AI replace teachers? And there have been so many discussions around it. Uh, while definitely, at least we at EdIndia strongly believe that there's nothing which can replace a teacher in the classroom, we definitely also feel that teachers need to keep pace with this technology, otherwise, they may become obsolete. So, what are some ways in which Muktangan is preparing their teachers for this evolving change that is happening, and what are some practices which we can take for our teachers in general as well?
Okay. So technology or even AI for that matter can definitely assist teachers, but no way can it replace a teacher. That's my personal opinion if you ask me. It can complement, it can support. How? Well, if you look at assessing students, their grading of their papers. Of course, if you have an open-ended question, then that cannot as easily be done. If you have multiple choice questions, yes, that's easier done. Then analyzing data. Because if a teacher were to sit, look at all the marks, tabulate it, analyze it, that would take time. Whereas digitally, it can be done in an instant. I think that can be done. But the softer skills, the social emotional needs of the student, I don't think that can be replaced by technology or AI.
Absolutely. So, talking about how AI or maybe a technology can assist the teacher, uh, there is a gap between the kind of people who are entering into teaching as a profession. So, unfortunately, and because we have been working in the space of pre service teacher education and working very closely with the B.Ed colleges, uh, especially in the tier 3 cities of India, it is very concerning to see that people who have no other career choices ultimately end up into B.Ed colleges. And I say this with a very, very heavy heart. But unfortunately, teaching as a profession has become something which is definitely last in your career choice. And hence, the talent of the people also who are entering into this career is unfortunately not the best. Now, upskilling this cadre of people to keep pace with the 21st century skills, being all that we require in our children of the future, uh, how do you see this struggle happening? Because teaching as a profession somehow has not gained or has rather deteriorated its reputation in the society. And would want to know from you what is your perception on teaching as an aspirational profession today, and what is it in the pre-service domain which we need to fix to be able to get better talent as teachers?
Well, there are various factors contributing to that, Nidhi. And first of all, I don't know whether I would fully agree with you when you say it's like, the cadre of people joining the teaching profession is not the best. I'm sure if you and I were to reflect back on our school days, I'm sure we'd be able to remember a few of excellent teachers.
Yeah,
Why were those teachers excellent? What made them stand out? See, when teachers are being selected or candidates are being selected to become teachers, and that's what we in Muktangan do. You may look at knowledge, you may look at skills, you may look at attitude. Well, knowledge and skills can be developed, but attitude is what you have. It's very crucial. So I think the selection needs to pay attention, needs to pay a lot more attention to the attitude, the willingness, the mindset. Of course, even mindset, if you have a growth mindset, can be changed. Ideas can change, beliefs can change. That's what we do with our trainees. Trainees are made to understand and reflect on their own beliefs, their own thinking, their own perceptions, and why, what has led to that. And then you make them see another perspective, another point of view, and they begin to open their eyes and reflect. But again, talking about teachers, if you have members of the community with the right attitude, you bring them in and show them and the way and say that this is how education, quality education, can be imparted in the classroom. This is how children can be developed, and you can bring about empowerment and upliftment of the entire community. You will get fabulous people to do it. I think that's what we are doing. So we've
absolutely.
seen it. We've seen it working.
So I completely agree to that, Dymphna. And I personally also am inspired by the teachers who in the past have, there have been very good teachers in my life who have helped me shape the way I am today. But unfortunately, if I still zoom out and look at the larger section of, the perception of teachers towards teaching as a profession, uh, I have personally spoken to a lot of people in the B.Ed colleges as well who are young graduates in the states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, for example. And when we talk about them of the aspiration of teaching as a career, unfortunately, they have never thought of this question. So we are struggling with a crowd wherein the attitude, it's rather a blank slate rather than having that attitude. So there is a positive indicator that yes, we can write on that slate, we can do correct development of them, we can give them the right growth mindset so that they evolve. But the amount of investment required to be able to make that shift is very high. And as a country, India has some very pressing needs in education, which we need to urgently fix. So there's a huge gap, as you already, at the beginning of your conversation, you started talking about that there's a gap which needs to be filled. But what are some quick fixes in which we can help our teachers in being able to turn around our classrooms, make our classrooms more safe for our children, a classroom where children would learn and gain the skills rather than just the knowledge? So, what are some essential shifts we want to do in the classroom?
I think giving the teacher more importance, more autonomy, and more respect. Because why is it that we don't have very many people drawn towards the teaching profession? right? And I don't know. I'm sometimes I wish I'm wrong, but if you look around, even amongst the parent community, how many of them truly really respect the teachers and what the teachers
Absolutely,
are doing for their
absolutely.
children? So, if in homes and if in the community and in the media, the teacher is not talked about respectfully, what are we passing on to our children? What are our children thinking? What is everybody thinking about the teacher per se? That's one. And I think another contributing factor is the gap between what happens in the teacher education and what is required to happen in the classroom. Because I recall when I did my B.Ed some 35 years ago, it was very theoretical and so far removed from what actually needs to happen in the classroom. So I think bridging that gap, giving the teacher trainees experiences or letting them go through the same experiences that they will require when they become teachers in the classroom, I think will help, bringing in that active constructivist approach even at the teacher education stage.
And I rightly pointed, I think that was what I was speaking about, respect for the profession. All of us remembers the good teacher that we have, but none of us would want our spouse or maybe our siblings to enter into teaching as a profession. We would definitely consider it as a very bold and strong step, as we say, because of multiple reasons: financial security, societal reputation, and whatnot. So, as a community, I think it is imperative for us to be able to respect teachers so that our children get good quality teacher. Only then can we expect that for our children. Uh, and second point, as you rightly highlighted, the connection between what is required in the classroom versus uh, what is being delivered. I genuinely feel there's a huge gap. It is very recently we have started speaking about the national professional standards for teachers, and that's where we are, as a country, we are trying to bring in some standardization for the teacher implementations to happen. I'm very afraid by the time our entire ecosystem in the education will get trained about it and will able to start delivering in the classroom, our classrooms would have gone maybe 10 years ahead of what the requirement is. So, while I am very hopeful of the developments that happen, I'm always afraid that the cycle will take a very long time to churn, and by the time our classrooms and our children, for that matter, will go way beyond what our expectations are. Uh, yes, that brings me to the end of my conversation. It was lovely interacting, Dymphna. We still have time, so anything that you want to discuss, open-ended conversations, and then we can maybe frame it into a structured conversation. Otherwise, we'll have a 5 to 10 minutes informal chat, and then we'll leave you for today.
I'd rather you ask a question and I'd answer it because I think once you get me started, I don't will not know where to stop.
Oh, all right,
I'm
amazing.
a teacher, and you know how we can,
No, I think what is imperative for us to right now understand is the pre-service domain. So because we are putting in a lot of focus as an organization in the area of pre-service teacher education, because and I'll tell you the reason why we are doing that. We started working with students directly, and we realized after a long time that there are many other organizations working directly on the same child, and it is not giving the right result.
work
So
directly on the
on the same child, the student,
same
right?
child.
There are
Yeah.
so many NGOs working on the same student, and the child is confused what is happening. So that didn't work. Then we started working with teachers directly, and we did a large amount of in-service teacher trainings, etc. And we realized the same problem. Came a
Yes.
time where every organization, has been delivering FLN trainings on teachers, activity-based learning on teachers, and whatnot. So a teacher
And to
who
add to it, the poor teacher's instructional time is taken away
is
attending
taken
all these
away.
courses. And he's
Absolutely.
left with hardly any time to deliver in the classroom.
So whatever you do with the teachers, ultimately the children in the classroom who are getting affected. Any time you take from the teachers, the children who are getting affected. So poor, she's carrying 10 modules of the same activity-based learning from 10 different organizations, but being able to implement nothing. So that was a realization, and that was where, as an organization, we shifted to pre-service teacher education, and we realized this is one area where it's the root, right? This is where the input is happening. So if we are somehow able to fix the input, maybe the output would be a better quality teacher on which we will have to make a little lesser investment in terms of being able to transact in the classroom. So that's where the shift happened. But when we entered into the space of pre-service, the problem is much more. It's not only the crowd which is coming in, because they are, they are novice, we can always work on them, but the curriculum is a huge problem. The faculty members are not best trained to be delivering lectures maybe in the classroom. They may not be a qualified teacher education or educator also, for that matter. So when challenges like these came up, we realized that the space or the problem is much larger than what we had thought. And that is where we are trying to connect with as much leaders as possible to understand what is it that needs to be fixed. So if you have to reflect back into your B.Ed, days, and let me tell you, the curriculum is just the same. Nothing has changed. The textbooks, the curriculum, the terminology, everything remains the same. Uh, in that case, what did you feel after stepping out from your school, that okay, if I were given knowledge on these things, that would have been better for me than being able to learn that? So if you can just reflect on and talk about what are those essential skills which teacher needs.
So, exactly what I said, rather than the theory, do a lot more of practice and observation.
Mhm.
Like what we do for our pre service teacher education course during that 1 year, in the first 6 weeks, we, just kind of bond with the trainees, help them to build their own confidence, uh, kind of, establish a rapport with them where they're comfortable communicating and answering in the classroom. A lot of skill building also happens, simple skills that they would require as a teacher, like making puppets, making teacher aids, blackboard work, and things like that. Then, after the 6 weeks are done, we continue with the theory part of it. So, out of the 5.5 days a week, 3.5 days is the theory, but
Okay.
2 entire days are spent in any one of our schools, wherein the trainee gets into the classroom and each trainee is assigned two children to observe close hand. And this observation will continue 2 days in the week till the end of the academic year. And at the end of the year, the trainee writes a detailed case study linking what he or she is learning in the theory to what is being observed in the classroom during the field work. And that's one. Secondly, from amongst our faculty, every trainee is mapped to a mentor or tutor. That mentor meets the trainee once a week for about 40 minutes. And those meetings are so crucial. So, just like we're talking about the social emotional aspect of the child and that mentoring that has to happen for the child, we are doing that even for the teacher trainee. So the faculty are mentoring the teacher trainee, just making her comfortable. What are her challenges? Sometimes she may have personal challenges on the home
Right.
front.
Right.
So also talking about that, listening to her, giving her advice, putting her onto a counselor if need be, and all of that. Helping her with whatever conceptual difficulties she might have, then helping her manage her time and all of that. So I think that also plays a very crucial role. And another thing I want to talk about is, we don't necessarily believe in qualifications
Mhm.
because, and this is also my personal belief, that sometimes you have people who come in with the so called qualifications and then it kind of creates a, fixed mindset. Whereas people who don't yet have those and have that passion and that willingness to be effective teachers, you'll see they have a more of a growth mindset, more of openness to learning.
All right.
So it's
So
easier to work with them,
it
easier
is
to
easier.
interact with them, easier to see them working with children.
Right.
And of course, not just through the chalk and talk method. Huh? It's not just I come in and I give you a lecture on all of it, but I actually demonstrate it to you. I actually take you with me and we do this with the children and we observe the children. And then as a trainee, I'm seeing, okay, this is what it is. This is what it's all about and this is how it should be.
So it's such a case. how would you comment on our existing teacher selection process? And let's consider the government selection processes in place, because this is the ideal way of doing it. We need to understand if a teacher has the right implementation skill or not. But the processes which we have in place, we have a central teacher eligibility exam, which is again very knowledge driven. More than 90%
Exactly.
of the paper, more than 90% of the
Exactly.
paper is knowledge driven. And then after that, I am not sure if there are any implement like a demo which a candidate is supposed to show if they have the right teaching skills. So how do you comment on our teacher selection process and being able to then showcase if we have the right teacher in the classroom?
Well, make the questions that we use to assess them different. Don't make it so knowledge based. Make it application based. Give them a case study. Ask them what they would do. Give them different situations. Ask them what they would do, how they would deal with this, how they would deal with that. Give them situations where they have to resolve a conflict, solve a problem. And you see how the teacher is able to deal with classroom situations, real life situations in the classroom, and think on her feet. Because that's what you want, right?
Absolutely. That is that.
Easier said
Uh,
than done. I know it's easier said than
exactly.
done.
Exactly. I was just constantly thinking, and I get it, what you are doing. And Muktangan must have, over 20 years, experimented a lot, failed on multiple things, I'm pretty sure. And that's how you establish good practices over the
Yeah.
years.
But
But
let me come
today,
in here, Nidhi. What was important and what was like one of our biggest strengths is that every step of the way we reflected on what we were doing. And then we kept reflecting, okay, did this work? Why? Did this not work? Why? How could we have done this differently? How could we have done this better? Okay, so this is work. That means we'll continue with this. That has not worked, so you need to try something. So I think just like that feedback loop and that reflection is very, very crucial. And again,
absolutely.
listening to the teacher's voice or the actual practitioner, his or her voice, because they are the ones doing it and they know best what works and what doesn't work.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think with this essential things, just to quickly summarize, it is very important to talk about the autonomy of teachers in the classroom. It's very important to give them the voice. Also, create forums where the teachers can come and talk about the best practices, building a community of teachers together so that they can learn from themselves, because they have learned enough, they have enough experiences than any one of us could have stepped into the classroom and given it to them. Also, it is very important that we consider, you emphasized on the number of children in the classroom, the 1 is to 15 number that you follow. Uh, Even if as a country we may not be able to get that number, there are ways and means in which we can still have alternative solutions to it, and community comes in as an extensive resource to be able to utilize that. So let's tap in the community, let's get the right people who want to become teachers and not focus on the qualification. That is one insight I am definitely taking in. And yes, let's relook at our curriculum, our teacher education practices. We need, it's high time we shift from theoretical knowledge to skill based and knowledge implementation, attitude testing. And these are some quick fixes which we can do right away. Uh, the problem is large, the problem is immense, but there are people, there is a huge government machinery working towards it, and there are, of course, organizations like us who have been working towards it. So we will definitely be able to be at a place where we can proudly say that yes, in India, we are able to achieve quality education for our children. Yeah. Any last words from your end, Dymphna?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.